Hey, what's happening, guys? What's going on? YouTube, you guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. In today's video, we're going to be talking about outrage culture and cancel culture. We're living in a world, in a society who's obsessed with outrage and cancel culture. But this week has been especially, people have been especially outraged this week. I've kind of started following Twitter a little bit more. It's kind of entertaining to me. Seeing what people are outraged about on a daily basis. I don't know if people are bored from quarantine or trying to blow off some steam, but every day people are outraged about something. And obviously this has been the case for a long time. We live in a culture of outrage and cancel culture, but this week has been especially ridiculous. I don't know if it's everyone trying to blow off steam from quarantine, if it's been kind of exacerbated by, you know, some of the police killings and stories in the news recently. But man, this week, like all day, every day, somebody's outraged about something on Twitter. Somebody's outraged that the Rice Krispie characters are white. Another group is outraged that the Cocoa Krispies character is a monkey. That one kind of blows my mind, right? Like, I think monkeys are a lot of people's favorite animals. I think almost everybody at some time in their life has wanted to have a monkey as a pet. A lot of children's toys, children's clothing, children's backpacks feature monkeys. I know as a kid I used to love Curious George. It's like it's one of the cuter animals, right? Like monkeys and dolphins. Obviously there is somewhat of a racial component to that. Some racists will call African Americans, monkeys. That's obviously wrong. But does that mean that we can never have a monkey on a cereal box? We can never have a monkey advertise a product? One of my favorite cereals is I always get Sugar Smacks and honey. Actually, let me check and see what the label is. I threw it out already. But two of my favorite cereals, which are essentially the same cereal, are like Golden. What the fuck is that cereal with the bear on it? I like that one. I typically wind up buying the one with the frog, Honey Smacks or Sugar Smacks or whatever they are. But cereal boxes have cute animals on them. Because typically white people who are too woke are going to get outraged over a monkey on a cereal box. Does that mean we can never use one of kids' favorite animals in advertising? I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but people are outraged about that. People are outraged. Another thing people are outraged about this week is Taco Bell told an employee he couldn't wear a Black Lives Matter face mask. Now, taking the whole Black Lives Matter issue out of the equation, period, I don't think the workplace is a place to espouse your political views, your societal views. As soon as you allow one person to do this, you have to allow competing messages and other people's views as well. And it just winds up being a huge distraction and a huge shit show. If you allow somebody to wear a Black Lives Matter mask, you have to allow the next employee to wear an All Lives Matter mask. You have to allow the next employee to wear a Mexican Lives Matter mask. You have to allow someone else to wear their pro-life, someone else to wear their pro-abortion, someone else to wear a Make America Great Again mask. And before you know it, you have 12 conflicting messages going on in your restaurant. It winds up being a huge distraction. Employees are bickering or debating amongst themselves. You're getting some customers who are offended because everybody likes to be offended these days. So it's much easier to say, look, if you're going to wear a mask and you want to have some cute llamas on it, fine. We don't want any political or societal messaging on masks. I think that's a pretty straightforward, common sense response. So that's what some of the things people are outraged about. People are outraged about Aunt Jemima. They're taking Aunt Jemima off the syrup bottle. Uncle Ben's rice is going away. I think we already took the Indian girl off the Land O'Lakes butter. And there was one more. Cream of Wheat is redoing their packaging as well. So yeah, it's just left and right this week. Everyone's outraged about something, which finally brings me to Joe Rogan. And you guys know I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. I get how some people are annoyed and think like Joe Rogan is a bunch of bros who are constantly talking about Joe Rogan. Like, I get that. I'm a big fan of the Joe Rogan podcast. I think it's entertaining. I think he brings on a lot of fascinating guests. It's one of the few really long form kind of discussion or conversation shows. Joe Rogan does podcasts, 2, 3, 4 hours pretty much every day. Brings guests from sports and athletics, from science, from doctors to business owners to companies to people involved in current events. He brings on a lot of interesting people. He lets everybody share their views. I think he's got a pretty open mind and is willing to look at views from different angles and is willing to look at opposing views. And for all those reasons, I really kind of enjoy his podcast. And so this morning on Twitter, they're trying to cancel Joe Rogan. And I think first it started out, they're kind of struggling, so they keep moving on from issue to issue. So first they were trying to cancel Joe Rogan because he said Joe Biden is senile and kind of said shame on the Democrats for, making that their choice to run against Donald Trump. That didn't really pick up any traction, likely because Joe Biden clearly is senile. So then they moved on to let's cancel Joe Rogan because he said masks are for pussies. Joe Rogan's stance and attitude towards the coronavirus is kind of funny to me. Early on, he was taking it very serious, was very kind of freaked out. And it almost kind of annoyed me a little bit. I kind of felt like he was kind of buying into the hype and kind of pushing this, kind of chaos and fear mongering. And then he quickly realized, I noticed he was kind of starting to come around, period. But once he had Elon Musk on the show and Elon Musk really tore down the coronavirus as being a huge sham, I noticed that being kind of a turning point for Joe Rogan. And then he kind of went the other way and was kind of telling other people that, masks are stupid and everything. And he had an interesting exchange with Bill Burr the other day about this topic when Bill Burr was saying that he would wear a mask outside to go for a run or something like that. Anyhow, the masks are for pussy thing didn't really draw enough outrage. So then they trawled through years worth. And here's the thing, right? You could go through, if you recorded somebody all the time, you could go through and find something offensive or twist to make something offensive about pretty much anybody out there, even, Mother Teresa or whatever. Joe Rogan does a podcast with almost every fucking day of the week, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours at a time. It's completely, free flow, unplanned. Of course, something is probably going to come out over the time that he may have said that he even himself doesn't even agree with. I think he's even said, I've listened to past podcasts and be like, I don't know why I said that. That's not necessarily how I feel. But part of, there's a lot of conversations. You're constantly talking, constantly trying to fill the air and fill silences. Anyhow, what people moved on, somebody found a clip of Joe Rogan talking to Joey Diaz. Now, if you guys don't know who Joey Diaz is a comedian. He's a very offensive comedian. Pretty much Joey Diaz's whole shtick is kind of, what's the word? Howard Stern was kind of a shock jock. Joey Diaz is kind of an offensive comedian. He's almost like a male Amy Schumer. Amy Schumer, pretty much her whole comedy shtick is like, hey, I'm a fat whore. Ha ha ha, right? That's pretty much her whole thing. And Joey Diaz is kind of like the male version of that. Joey Diaz used to be a coke addict. He used to rob people's apartments, steal from his friends. He was kind of a con man and a crook and a thief. He's since kind of turned his life around, but he's a very offensive guy, very kind of raunchy in terms of sexual stuff. And I mean, pretty much every time he comes on, he's talking about snorting coke off some broad's pussy or, just outrageous stuff like that. Apparently he had said something about how he was getting blowjobs from women in return for letting them go on at the comedy store or whatever that comedy theater that he and Joe perform at. And Joe Rogan, is kind of laughing and slapping the table. And so now they're outraged at, it's kind of a resurgence of the Me Too. It's kind of like the Me 3 movement 2.0 coming back. And people are outraged about that. Joe Rogan will be the first person to say comedy is meant to be offensive. Comedy is meant to be kind of no holds barred, put everything out there. Joe Rogan even says, me and my friends, in the car, we'll talk about things that anybody else would be like, wow, that's fucked up. That's really offensive. But that's his whole thing is to him, comedy is about having no limits and being able to say crazy shit and basically trying to be as offensive as you can. So when you get two comedians talking, obviously stuff like that is going to come out. Doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of traction. I think people who don't like or don't know Joe Rogan may get a little bit butthurt about it. I think people who like Joe Rogan kind of see it for what it is. And I think the Joe Rogan audience tends to be an audience who is completely against cancel culture and finds it to be ridiculous in the first place. Joe Rogan has daughters. I'm sure that's not necessarily something he condones or necessarily agrees with. But at the end of the day, it's comedy. And, I think that's kind of probably where he stands on it. But I just thought this was kind of an interesting story. In terms of the whole outrage culture thing, I figure we kind of, since this is a business channel, talk a little bit about that. You really can't avoid offending people these days. I saw people here were two of the craziest kind of outrage things of the week. So one was, I forgot already. Okay, so we'll jump to the second one. One of them is, so people are upset with Stan's Donuts. I don't know if you guys know Stan's Donuts. Donuts is kind of like a, I don't know, luxury bakery or whatever. They're not the best donuts in the world. I'd rather go to like a small bakery or something like that, but it's kind of a chain donut shop that's a higher quality donut as Dunkin' Donuts. They're actually pretty expensive. They don't make a bad donut. They got a pretty good nitro brew. I got one not too far from me that I go to from time to time. But Stan's Donuts in the past had apparently donated donuts to the police, and people are outraged about that, right? How dare somebody donate donuts to the police? The other outrage story of the week is, I don't know if you guys saw this one, but Domino's, 8 years ago, the White House press secretary, I believe she was in college at the time, because I think she's still relatively young. Domino's, or the current White House press secretary, 8 years ago, when she was a college student, tweeted at Domino's, you guys have the best pizza. It's even better than New York pizza. I know a lot of you guys work as digital marketers or social media managers. Some of you guys may even have jobs as, jobs or clients where you manage their social media. And if somebody says something about your brand, what do? You interact with them, you engage with them, you respond back. So Domino's responded back, wow, that's a huge compliment. Thanks for the compliment. Keep enjoying your Domino's. 8 years later, that college girl became the White House press secretary, and obviously everybody hates Trump these days. Everybody hates everything associated with Trump. So now everybody hates Domino's because 8 years ago they responded to somebody who at the time was a college student who 8 years later became the White House press secretary. So apparently Domino's is in the wrong because they didn't vet the social profile of everybody that they replied to. Even though I'm sure their social media manager is some 22-year-old whose job is just to reply to people with kind of vague things like, thanks for the compliment. And two, Domino's should have known that 8 years later she would go on to work for Donald Trump, and therefore they shouldn't respond back to her tweet. So, that's kind of all the stuff I wanted to kind of rant about today. Like I said, it's Saturday morning, having a cup of coffee, figured I'd get a video out there. Let me know what you guys think about this current, cancel culture, outrage culture. What do you think was the kind of most ridiculous story of the week? Do you think any of these outrage moments of the week, have any standing? Are things worth getting upset over? Is taking Aunt Jemima off of a syrup bottle going to make anybody's life better? Were any black people upset about Aunt Jemima being on a cereal bottle or on a syrup bottle in the first place? Like most black people I see commenting on Twitter, as well as black friends of mine and stuff, I could give two shits who's on the syrup bottle. So it seems to be kind of a fake issue in the first place, and it's also kind of funny how big corporations are kind of trying to jump on these movements. And I think it's kind of funny, in a day and age when people are talking about, companies not offering fair wages and things like that. If I'm Amazon or if I'm a big company and I can jump on a trivial issue and be like, yeah, we should take Aunt Jemima off a syrup bottle, if that distracts from me not paying my employees well or me not treating my employees well, shit, I'll jump on every fake social issue that you guys can bring up because it keeps people distracted from the real issue and it keeps people divided. Oh, that's one last kind of funny story. So I think today is June 19th. If I'm not mistaken, everybody wanted Amazon to, there's a push to make June 19th a federal holiday. I know Governor Pritzker is trying to make it a state holiday in Illinois, and everybody was pushing Amazon to basically consider it a holiday and give everybody the day off work. Amazon decided not to do that. And while I don't find this to be racist, I do, just knowing how outraged people get about stupid shit, I definitely think it was a stupid move to do. But at least here in Chicago, I believe it is, for January 19th or Juneteenth or whatever it is, Amazon decided to basically have a day educating people about Black history, and they're going to serve lunch. And guess what they decided to serve for lunch? Chicken and waffles. So everybody's outraged that Amazon's serving chicken and waffles. Just knowing the culture and society we live in, I think that was a stupid move. But really, is that racist to serve chicken and waffles? Chicken and waffles is fucking delicious. If I go to a restaurant and they have chicken and waffles, that's typically what I'm going to get. It's not something you necessarily see everywhere. I think chicken and waffles is fucking delicious. There's a soul food restaurant over in Oak Park. A buddy of mine lives right down the street from, and we regularly go over there and eat chicken and waffles. And it's probably 95% a black crowd in there. And everybody loves their chicken and waffles. Is it racist to serve, say, tacos on Cinco de Mayo? Is that offensive to Mexicans? I don't know, if you think it is, I think you're crazy, but if that isn't racist, then I don't know how serving chicken and waffles is racist to black people. Like, I think soul food is kind of a cultural food. And I love soul food. Soul food's fucking delicious. We're coming up on 15 minutes. I'm back to the free edition of Screencast-O-Matic, so that's all we got. Drop your comments. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you on the next video.